We are live.
All right. We're live.
Welcome to the garage.
That's right. Welcome to down in GolfWRX headquarters. And we're live. I don't know if anybody's actually watching yet, but we appreciate it if you are. And we've got a few questions that people came through and wanted to ask us. So we'll answer those, and then maybe we'll just shoot the breeze.
And we always have like some frequently asked questions, right? I think there's some typical ones
true.
that we get. So
yeah, I'll give you that. So so I guess we basically said ask us anything, and we got a few questions. So what's the first question we have?
Yeah,
this is from the forum, the GolfWRX forum.
Well, shout out to Quebec Club Ho.
Oh, fellow Canadian.
Yeah, there you go. So the question was about reusing a golf shaft. Like, how many times can you pull it out? That's a tough one. Depends on the shaft. Steel shafts, obviously, there's not a huge issue as long as you're prepping them properly every single time. The big issue with graphite is if it's lightweight, or if you've over prepped it, or every time you go and like clean it off, you're removing some material. I don't really like reusing shafts that often. Usually like 3 times max. So like the original, the second time, and the third time, whatever it goes in, it's probably going to stay there. Now, the nice thing that we have, obviously, is we have shafts with tips on them now, or adapters.
Yeah.
So if you're just swapping adapters, it makes it a lot easier, but still like 3 adapters max for me. What about you? What's your go-to?
I'm trying to think of how many, because you're 100% right. I mean, I've got shafts that now you can tell the tip doesn't quite fit as tight as it used to. You've sanded it a few times, and you've removed epoxy. And when you remove that epoxy and re-sand it, you're always going to lose some material. It's just going to happen. I definitely go more than 3. Man, I'm trying to think of what the most I have. I mean, I've definitely got some that have gone well over 6 or 7 different heads, and I've had some that have gone 3 in just the same head that I put in, pulled out, pulled in, put out. So yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, the biggest thing, like you said, is how careful are you pulling it, prepping it, and installing it again? Because the same thing, if you put it in a hosel that you didn't really sand well, it's got some burrs on it or sharp edges, that's going to take some of the life out of it. But if you
use a shaft puller and like a proper shaft puller, and you're using as little heat as possible, you can reuse them. But it's always one of those things where I'm kind of like,
But yeah, I don't think and every shaft's probably different. I mean, if you go to something like a Grand Basara that's 39 grams, you probably have way fewer.
That's one time.
Yeah, I mean, you got way fewer pulls than an 80-gram TX.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the shaft, but it's really hard to put a finite number on it. But you're probably right. I mean, something like if you're super careful and you've been doing it a long time, you probably got half a dozen swaps on it before it really you have to worry about it maybe failing.
The most that I had an old graphite design Pershing, which that's a good one.
I love that shaft.
That's a classic. I still have it somewhere, and it's been probably in at least 2 or 3 different drivers, and that was like before the age of like even adapters were like hugely readily available. So I put it in quite a few heads. I feel like whatever it goes into next, probably an experiment, will be the last one. So that's why I've been kind of holding on to it. I think I saw 4 club heads, but every time shaft puller, little heat as possible. One of the things for like pulling shafts would be to not use a heat gun.
Oh yeah.
Use a little micro torch, like a butane micro torch, because then you can really focus on where you're going to put the heat. Only because what ends up happening a lot of times is, like, the old idea was you'd use a heat gun, or some places they didn't want to use a torch because you could like add someone with not a lot of experience and they torch the head ruin the paint. There was some of the old Nike drivers. If you took just a little bit of heat, the paint would just
bubble up,
just like get destroyed. Not too much of a quality control issue now, but if you are able to focus the heat and get it on there, then it's usually not too much of a problem, like you said, to do it. I'm a 3 pull guy, but I'm usually changing enough where I don't really have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, I mean,
the adapters.
Yeah, I mean, see, even for me, the adapter, I honestly need to invest in Club Connects. But there's just no way around it. I need to take like $350, buy like every manufacturer's adapter, and then like 10 adapters for for shafts. There's just no way around it. But yeah, I mean, I'm even pulling stuff out of adapters because like, oh, I want to try this now in this head. And now even like the G400 Max, which I used last year, well, the 410 uses a different adapter. So
as we found out at the show, just some disappointment.
Exactly. So now I have like those shafts that I've got to pull those tips off just to play them in the new driver. So, but I'm going to run it literally until it breaks. And I had that happen. I haven't had it happen in a while. The last time that I remember it happening was, remember the tour issue Project X all blue with just like,
the coating?
Yeah, with just the coating like 7B3 or whatever they were. I had one of those that I did a really terrible hosel prep on an old Squareway, FDI Squareway. And they had these tour hosels that
the clocking hosel?
The clocking hosel. So I put that in there. I did a really bad job. And after like 3 weeks, I was on the range and I hit one a little heavy and it just crumbled. Thankfully, it didn't launch the head. It just crumbled on the mat and was just toast. But that was the last one I've had break. And that was, that was a long time ago.
Was old.
Yeah, I mean, it was at least 5-6 years ago that I was still messing around with that head.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say just be careful. After 3, just be a little wary.
Yeah. We got another one here.
And Biden too.
Yes, 3 wood. So about 3 woods and spin.
I love that. This guy and I have been PMing each other for like a week talking about fairway wood shafts, and now knowing that you're here, that's why he probably wants a new perspective.
Shafts you all recommend look into. It's a tough one. I mean, it's really difficult to recommend a golf shaft, having seen you never hit a golf ball. My biggest thing is always get fit. I talk about it every time I write something about club fitting or club building because it's really difficult to recommend. I've talked to guys a good example. We know, I think we both know Bill Lang from Project X True Temper, and he'll say all the time that they'll design low launch shafts. And like if you use the great example would be like the Pro Launch. They still make them, but the Pro Launch Red and the Pro Launch Blue. And the red is designed very similar to like the profile of a Pro Light, designed to be low launch. They'll give them to some players, and they are able to launch it way higher than a Pro Launch Blue. It just depends on the player's swing type, their profile, their transition, how they go into the ball, if they de-loft, if they add loft. A lot of times people that take away loft are also hitting steeper on it. It's not always, especially with fairway wood, it's not always easy to de-loft a fairway wood and hit up on it like a driver. Like Rory McIlroy is like a beautiful example of being able to hit up and de-loft and create a very low spin loft on a driver. So you get a lot of distance out of that. But to do that on a fairway, especially off like a flat lie, is a lot harder to do. It's a little bit easier to hit off a tee, but again, you don't have the deep face, blah, blah, blah. So it's really difficult to recommend. Looking at your what's in the bag here, and Biden too, if we're looking at kind of what you're using now, some Moduses in the iron, some heavier stuff, an F1, the Fuji F1 85 in R9 TP. That's an oldie, but it's a goodie. The F1 is and was designed to be very low launch. So if you're looking for that lower spin, that is like the profile you're going to look at, to be honest. There's a lot of options you could use. I mean, Fuji has a lot of options. There's the Atmos, which is the black, right? Is the lower launch, right? So
if you're in the low mid, black would probably be your. It's not ultra low. I haven't found. So I would say that would be probably fit pretty well. Yeah,
and then, but again, if you were to use a Ventus and like do they come in 85? I can check that out. Know that.
They haven't fully, I think, released all this, but there is an 8X in the Ventus.
Yeah, so again, one of those examples of you may end up getting something that's going to be similar, but as they promote and talk about in that, and like a lot of companies are now, they're able to take newer materials and have a shaft play a very similar profile, but they feel better. Used to be like the lower launch ones would always just feel a little stiffer. That's what the new Smoke series from Project X is basically all about, is to create the same profiles and have it feel a little smoother in general. And we talked to the guys at Fuji at the show, and the Ventus designed to perform for a lot of players, but it's also designed to feel really good. So again, it could be one of the ones that works for you, but to really recommend one and without seeing either some TrackMan numbers or anything like that, it's really difficult. So find a fitter, and hopefully you find one that works. What you have is a good one. I mean, the head is still going to perform really well.
Yeah.
If that's what you're using. So sometimes it's hard to beat. One of the fairwoods that like I still go back to now is an SLDR because it's super low spin and it's just a wicked fairway. I hit down on it a little bit, so it keeps spin down. Not a fan of that club.
I was never an SLDR guy.
I could never find that. I never found it worked with the driver. But as soon as I hit the fairway, it was got a few of those heads lying around just in case.
It was never forgiving enough. And now with M. Biden too, like I said, I know a little bit more about. He's got a really quick tempo. I think he needs something a little more butt stiff. I think you're right. Atmos black, I think hazardous black, something like that would be really good just because he's got a quick tempo, little help with control.
Yeah. Still
lower launch, low spin. So, yeah.
Cool. You have some questions already?
Oh, yeah.
What advice do you give to a younger person learning to build golf clubs? Buy a lot of crappy ones and ruin them first. That's what I did, to be honest. Who's that? Johnny GolfWRX. There we go. So, it's a great question because I know we talk about it all the time as far as like building golf clubs. I ruined a ton of golf clubs before I was able to like work on them. And that was kind of one of the things that I did. I'd go to like used stores and buy kind of just mix mash clubs and bend and tweak and pull shafts and reinstall and see what you could do as far as reaming or doing things wrong on purpose. Reaming clubs off center. See if it would cause like breakage. I do remember I recall reaming a driver. It was a crappy old
like 335 to 350?
Like club head?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was something. It was like it was a Ram from a package set. It was really not an expensive golf club, but I bought it just because I wanted to see if it was possible to. I think I broke a drill bit trying to torque it. So that was the lesson learned. But yeah, it's one of those things where if you go out and if you ruin a few golf clubs first, it's a good start. And usually try to do it on your own clubs.
Yeah.
Don't suggest that you're going to do work for someone else and then end up, having to apologize because that can get very expensive very quickly. Whereas if you're working on your own gear, it's a really good start.
The other thing too is start with steel.
Yes.
If you're going to start, go with like irons and wedges, putters. Mess with those first because there's way less room for error. And then once you feel comfortable reshafting, whatever, after you work with steel, like I said, pulling, all that, once you get it down with steel and you feel comfortable with it, then start moving on to some graphite. And again, buy cheap stuff to start because we told a story at lunch today about how when I first started, I remember heating up a graphite shaft and twisting the head to get a shaft out, and I watched it just all the layers come apart. I mean, so yeah, definitely go cheap, but start with irons, wedges, putters. It's just easy. There's way less room for error. I mean, you can
more room for error.
Oh, there's more, yeah.
More room for error.
More room for error. I mean, you can definitely overheat a steel shaft a little bit and be okay. Where graphite, as soon as you add too much heat, man, there's not really coming back from it. So,
and you need less tools with steel as well.
True.
That's like the big benefit.
You
just need a vise and a torch essentially, and hopefully some gloves and some safety glasses. Safety glasses are always highly recommended because then, too, like you say, if you want to pull a wedge and just try it out, see what happens. It's easy to fix, easy to try. Get some epoxy. Golf specific epoxy is always better to use. You can use other stuff, but a lot of times it's the temperature breakdown. So if you find something, a 3M makes some really good stuff, but a lot of times it's a little bit more expensive. But if you are just looking to try it out, and especially if you're going to be using something where you don't want to have to worry about weighing out epoxy, something I do because I use larger parts, I buy it in larger volumes. But you can just use the little squirt guns. You can buy the little tube packs, and then they're just a lot easier. It might it's a little bit more expensive off the get go, but if you're doing a few clubs to test out, it's a good one to try as well.
Yep.
I think we got another question here. I can't read, so
Stephen Copper.
Yeah. If you have a counterbalanced driver, what would you match up in your 3-wood? Comes down to fitting.
Well, yeah. I mean, personally, myself, I played counterbalance and driver. I've had success with it. A couple years ago, I've kind of moved back now, but again, had some success with it. Really hit the driver well, but I never went counterbalanced in the 3-wood. I tried it. It just didn't work out for me. So I think a lot of it is one, fitting, and two, until you try it, it's hard exactly to say yes or no. But I found for 3-wood, that lighter feel, I don't know. I mean, maybe I needed to add more head weight, but then again, I don't play my stuff long. So if I'm just going to cut a counterbalance shaft short and then hop out the head back to, a standard swing weight, I don't know what I'm getting out of it then. Maybe I'm adding more mass to the head, so you might get some more distance out of it.
Standard like irons?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, for me, I play a 3-wood at 42.5. So it's really, so it's short. Yeah. So for me, I don't, like I said, I messed with it. It didn't work for me. I think it's really going to depend on the player and what you're trying to achieve.
It's a lot of times it's like a swing profile thing. Just because like a driver's so unique as far as the swing goes.
Yep.
Actually, speaking of Rory before, Rory talks about that, which is why he struggles with wedges, which makes him such a great driver of the golf ball. Makes him when he's on with his wedges, he's great, but when his timing and stuff is off, it becomes more difficult just because of the mechanics of his golf swing. And that's why you see guys who are sometimes really good wedge players. Like you have great ball strikers like Aaron Badley, or probably one of the better examples. But his driving game, because he does tend to hit down a little bit more, his dynamics make it more difficult from a driver perspective. So you have this mix match between the two. For a driver, it depends. There are shafts that are counterbalanced. You can add weight as a counterbalance. The clubs are shorter, so sometimes people actually use less mass in those. Sergio's although not necessarily a shining example of etiquette right now, but it's a good example of someone that uses the counterbalance in basically every golf club. Retief Goosen used to do it, I believe, as well. And then he would like add counter weight and then like re-weight club heads. So he plays in very heavy golf club, total weight golf clubs. But it's one of those things to experiment with. If it means maybe not using as much weight, or because you're using a different shaft, or if you're using something that does have a higher balance point, and that's like even in the 410 series from Ping now, like the driver's counterbalance. But I haven't heard or read anything about them actually adding a plug of mass like with the driver and the stock shaft in the 410 like they did with the 3-wood. But they have a shaft that's higher balance point. They just haven't done it as much, and they obviously do a lot of testing and engineering that goes into it. So it depends on the player. But it's one of those things that it's kind of always fun to experiment with.
Yeah, for sure.
When you talk of shaft length, is that with head off or head on? Extend my driver's 44.25 with the head off. So what does that play? It's not a good question.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're
trying to understand.
So when I say like 42.5 inches, like that's with head. That's shaft in head, assembled club.
Yeah.
So that's 42.5 is what I play 3-wood at. Like what he's saying is he's got a shaft length of 44.25, which again, depending on head, because every one of them is different.
If that's with an adapter or not, like it's
it's true with an adapter.
One of the measurements people don't necessarily take into account all the time is it's called bottom bore to ground measurement. Well, let's just grab a club here. This will be fun.
But yeah, from what I was saying is full playing length. So when I was describing my 3-wood, 42.5 is playing length.
So we've got a Cleveland 3-wood here, and we'll show this off real quick. So the hosel bore probably only goes to here, but the measured length of the golf club is measured off of a line roughly parallel to the sole, so kind of in this no man's land here. But the measurement from the bottom of the hosel to there is called the bottom bore to ground measurement. It varies from club to club. It varies on irons. Most irons in a set are going to be very similar. If not, it's supposed to be exactly the same. But every driver is slightly different. So if you go from if you pull a shaft from a TaylorMade, just pull a shaft right out of the adapter, put it into a Callaway adapter, you'll actually add length roughly half an inch because that bottom bore to ground measurement is different. I've mentioned it before because people will ask if they're pulling, which is like my big pet peeve of mine, is like reusing iron shafts over and over and over again in different clubs. Just because if you're using different sets, so you've gone from a Titleist to a Strixon to a TaylorMade or whatever, your iron lengths are going to fluctuate all the time. Because of that measurement. So when I talk length, I mean the assembled length of a golf club, because that bottom bore measurement always changes.
Yep. Yeah, and he just put on like TS3. I don't know off the top of my head what a TS3. I mean, I'm assuming TS3 plays 45.5.
They're usually like an inch and a quarter.
Yeah,
so most of them are around an inch to inch and a quarter.
That makes sense. I mean, 44.25, 44.25. You add 1.25. That turns to 45.5.
Yeah.
So yeah, that comes out to 45.5, which is probably pretty close to stock length.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah.
So Yeah, so it's inch and a half there.
Thanks,
so.
Galloway Golf. That was good. Thanks for the help there. That's beautiful.
We don't have the Google machine here.
Yeah.
It's hard to memorize all those things.
I don't have those things in my head all the time. Though sometimes I know things I shouldn't know golf clubs. Got another good question here.
I love the setup.
Oh yeah, so there's definitely some tongue in cheek with this one. First time caller, long time listener. The best blade irons for a 17 handicap.
So Get Air 23.
Yeah.
These guys are in the form a lot. I've read a lot of his stuff. Best blades for something. I'm gonna figure out
the wedges. Just wedges.
I mean, do you consider a TMB a blade? I mean, it's got a muscle back design. I mean, it's
hollow.
But I mean, it's got reduced offset. I mean, you're talking true one-piece forged blade.
If you mean blade, there's not a blade that I would ever give to a 17 handicap. Now, you'll always hear like, good ball striker, terrible short game.
Love it.
Something like that.
I'm a 17, I'm a great ball striker.
Yeah.
I just can't chip a putt or drive or hit my fairway or anything.
I think, and I'm a good example of this, and I think it depends on the player. And because when I started playing golf, I was like 10, 11, and I had some knockoff DCI set that was like big cavity backs. And then my first real set of golf clubs were Ping I2s. I think I was 14 at the time. So I was 14, I got a set of Ping I2s, and that was awesome. They were already like 10 or 12 years old at that point. So I got a good deal on them. I was really excited to have like a name brand set of golf clubs. And then when I was around a 15, probably 15 handicap at that point, I wasn't playing a lot. I was playing a lot in the summertime, but I wasn't ever really into it as I was getting older. And then the S59 came out, which from a playability perspective was not the most forgiving iron on the market. Workable. It's not unforgiving.
Yeah,
it's workable.
Yeah, you got to work it.
It's workable. And I went from I2s to S59 blades or S59s, and I went from that 16 handicap down to like a 7 in a summer. And that was because I played almost every day of summer. I was a kid, didn't have any responsibility, which was lovely at the time. So there's some room for some quick improvement there. Should I have been playing them with the 2 iron in the set that I bought? No, never.
With the 2,
shouldn't have
played the 2 iron anyway.
No, I know. It was great off the tee when it was like baked out in the summertime. It'd fly like 170 yards and just roll forever. Well, forever was a relative term at that point in time.
Back then.
But it's not a club that you're going to fit people into very often. I've worked at a lot, like some fitting studios, and like blades look great, but even like really good players, you're going to see advantages to like more of a cavity back. You see it on tour still. There's that kind of like 30% holdout of blades, and they'll never change. I mean, Tiger used to play a blade 2 iron. He's out of the blade 2 iron now.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not a club that I ever really recommend to a 17 handicap, but there are more playable blades.
Yeah, I mean, like I was shocked that I'll go ahead and recommend one, and I'm not a 17, but I can play like a 17. I think honestly, those new Mira 501s. I was shocked when I hit them. I was shocked at how easy they were to hit. And I don't hit it in the center of the club that often. I do tend to catch it on the little bit on the heel. But no, it was. I think those Mira, what are the MC 501s? To me, I've probably been one of the.
I'm trying to look it up right now.
To me, they're probably one of the more forgiving irons that I've hit or blades that I've hit in a long time. I don't hit a lot of blades. I love looking at them in the store. I don't necessarily run in there and try to hit them. But the MC501 to me was pretty forgiving. Again, I would never recommend it to a 17 handicap, but it, at least for me, was easier to hit. And so, I'm a really bad 8.
Now I'm looking at the 501. That's basically a design that is a blade, but there's a lot of, it's not perimeter weighting, but the mass is shifted a little lower. One that I actually got to test, which I thought was actually a really good playable blade, if you want to use that term, would be the New Level.
Oh, yeah. It's got a similar design.
Very similar design.
It, yeah.
623M. I got a chance to try these out pretty early on. What they've done is they've created a wider sole. So anytime you see a club that's got a wider sole, what you do is you're lowering the center of gravity. So you can have a club that looks very much like a blade, but if the center of gravity is low enough, then you're not going to have that super high CG workableness to it, or less forgiving aspect to it. It's a nice club. It's not the smallest looking blade from heel to toe, so you can think about if you've ever seen a Mira baby blade versus this, the new level or the 501. The blade length's a lot longer, so that's a way to, if you want to try a club that's more along the blade lineup but is more forgiving, look for blade length and sole width, because that's going to push the center of gravity lower. But again, it's one of those things where it's not one of the clubs you're going to recommend all the time, but there are certain players. 17 handicaps maybe a bit of it's a bit of a stretch, but
just a bit.
If you want to try it, I mean, you can give it a shot.
I'm pretty sure he's not a 17 handicap.
No,
he's toying with you.
I know, but it's a good question, because it's one of those things where I've seen the joke PGA memes on Instagram, which has some pretty funny stuff. It's the Lisa Simpson meme where she's like barking orders at people, and it was you just broke 80, but you don't deserve to play blades, which is funny. I mean, it is funny. I was an example where I didn't listen to that at the period of time, and I play blades now, but I play a mixed combo set. So the longer irons go right to like the Mizuno Fly Highs, because they're hollow and they're faster, and I need that.
Yeah.
So where I want the workability in the shorter clubs and I'm not focused on distance, it's one of the ones where a combo set is a good option as well.
Sure. All right.
So we got some more questions rolling in.
Heck yeah. Now this is a great. So Matt Logo, when installing a Dynamical X7 or KBS C-Taper 130X into a putter, which shaft do you use? Wedge, 7-iron, 3-iron? Doesn't even matter.
I'd probably just use the wedge shaft. If it's taper, if it's taper, then you want to probably use the wedge shaft, just because it's designed for a heavier head weight.
Yeah, that. I mean, if you're going with X7 or C-Taper 130X, you're evidently looking for the stiffest shaft possible to put in a putter. So yeah, go wedge.
Yeah.
I mean, either the step on the X7 is going to be the really shortest, really low. But yeah, I mean, again, it sounds like you're just looking for the stiffest shaft possible. So yeah, I'd say wedge, and then butt trim it down.
Yeah, that's all.
But it's going to be really harsh.
Yeah, I think that's where we're seeing like these new shafts kind of come into play, like the stability for BGT, where they've created something that offers some feel, but is still like it's not like overly harsh, right? I know a lot of people that use the Quintic putting studio.
Yep.
They'll show that there's less deflection with a stiffer golf shaft in a putter. Depends on the person's tempo, obviously, and the head weight of the putter. Those old putters where the head weight was anywhere between 320 and 335 grams, which is still like more modern, but a lot of it are now like 350 to 400. You're going to get a lot more flex in those if you haven't changed the flex of the putter shaft in a long time. You have this very soft shaft, and this is going to cause deflection. That's going to be the theory behind the stability, or what their testing proves. But yeah, I would probably just use a pitching wedge to answer the question without going. I know I kind of go tangent. I go tangent really quick on these.
Hey, it's not a bad deal.
New Pro V1X or TP5X?
TP5X outdoors yet? I played the new Pro V1, Pro V1X, and I played last year's TP5, or the previous gen TP5X. My gamer was the TP5 all of last year. I just thought it was a really stable ball. For me, it felt good. It wasn't super soft. It wasn't really firm. It was just a good mix. I don't need the super low spin of the TP5X. And for me, it felt a little clicky on shorter shots and putting. So, I mean, with the new one, I don't know yet because like I said, I haven't been able to play the new ball yet outdoors. But if you're going by 2018, I mean, I played standard TP5. If you're looking for, a lower spinning ball, longer with your driver, long irons, all that, TP5 may get you a little lower than the Pro V1X, maybe. But again, depending on player swing.
I think it's like a loaded question. Or loaded answer here.
So pick Titleist, and then we both have one, and then neither company can get mad at us.
Yeah. Titleist is always the standard. It is. But I was on like a golf ball journey last year. I tried literally everything. I tried direct to consumer balls. I tried like stuff like I had Mizuno golf balls from Europe because I had a friend over there send me some stuff because I was just really super curious on these things. I found a couple sleeves of Hanmas from Europe that I got a hold of. Oh,
6-piece?
No, it was an older model.
Okay. $90 a dozen?
Yeah. I tried TP5, TP5X, Pro V1, Pro V1X. Kind of ran the whole gamut, to be honest, of what was out there. I found that most companies' premium golf ball in like the lower spin model was the one that I always gravitated towards. And it just comes down to that like sound. I found that the Pro V1 always feels a little softer to me. I know that's kind of one of their main focuses is like how it feels around the greens and how it feels on certain shots. But performance wise, I'm not a robot. So in the amount that I play, even in like, I'm like 5 handicap, you get out there in the wind and conditions are different every time I go out and play. My swing's different every time I play. My back feels different every time I go play. I got different clubs in the bag every time I go play. It's really hard to compare the two because I don't go out and like buy half a dozen of each golf ball and go to the putting green and like hit shots all the time. I do that a little bit, but it's just like a mixed match of golf balls. So it's really hard to compare. The best thing to do, just grab a sleeve of each, go to the chipping green, see what you like, and take them out to the golf course and hit them side by side. The trajectory will vary a little bit differently. I remember, as an example of like just trajectory, I remember the Nike, was it the platinum and the black or something? Those old ones?
Yeah, the Nike
One. There was like the
Nike One.
Oh yeah, they were like OG.
Okay. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
I remember I was playing and I was really curious on both of them, and I teed them up back to back on like the course that I played all the time, and I hit 2 drives and one hit him. I felt like I hit him exactly the same, and one was probably looked like 15 yards lower in the air, and I was like, man, I hit those exactly the same. There was definitely a trajectory difference. They were side by side in the fairway, which was pretty good because I don't normally am not able to throw a towel over where I hit drivers, and so that was like, okay, it's more of a trajectory thing than really a distance thing. So take them out, see what works best, but you're going to be fine with either one, whatever you end up with, whatever you prefer.
That's pretty much how I decided on between like Pro V1 and TP5. Last year was just taking them out and playing them, and for whatever reason, I hit the TP5 a little better, and that's what went in the bag.
Let's see what we got. We got UST 780s to play between. So playing between regular and stiff. I'm going to guess it's recoil?
Yeah, recoil 780 ES to play halfway between reg and stiff. Better to hard step a reg or soft step a stiff?
So that's a weight thing. For me, it's a weight thing. Yeah, because the regulars are going to play a little bit like lighter, and the stiffs are going to play a little softer. So if you play under length, I would go with the stiffs and soft step. If you play something standard or over length, I would go regular and hard step.
It's not a bad idea because I was thinking soft step just because, feeling that I like a little more weight. But yeah, I kind of like that idea.
I used to do it a lot. Like it was when building, like, don't build as much as I did before, but when I was building at like hundreds of clubs a day, basically I would get a prescription from a fitter. I wasn't actually in the fitting all the time. So sometimes there was some interpretation of if you wanted to use like a 60 gram and you could kind of mix and match, shout out to Accurate because their I-Series has this like 40 to like 90 gram shaft weight. So you can kind of mix and match in between the set, which is really cool. So it's always like if someone was in between, I'd always ask the fitter if they had questions or the fitter was kind of trying to figure it out. That was the general rule that we always went with. Longer, go lighter, shorter, go heavier, and then you can fine tune from there because head weights are going to obviously adjust. Once you use a frequency machine, you can dial and flex either way.
Do you think though, like the stiff, even if you did soft step it, would still, again, depending on swing, everything, could still potentially launch a touch lower than a reg hard step?
So many variables.
I'm just wondering if the profiles are exactly the same, it might depend. Again, depending on player, all that. But if everything was the same robot, like on a robot, do you think the stiff would still maybe launch just a hair lower, just because the profile overall is stiffer, even though it is soft step?
It really depends on the player, and then, as you say, it depends on the tempo, right? Someone who's smoother, probably reg hard stepping versus someone who's like quicker tempo, stiff, soft stepping.
True.
So it's a great question. It's a common question that people debate all the time. We're not really debating on it.
No,
but it's one of those things where it would depend on your tempo and those kind of things to figure out. But that's a really good question. Let's see here. What do you think of the M5 and M6 both being low spin this year? I got the M5 after finding more consistent and oddly forgiving for me.
Oh, the M6. I mean, yeah, I mean, low and low spins kind of. Again, I mean, everything now
low
is
spin's
low
overrated.
Spin. Yeah, I mean, and it depends on how low spin you need to go. I mean, there are those few people out there who need ultra low spin to hit down on it, and they carry that kind of ball speed, whatever. But in terms of low spin, everything now is kind of low spin. I mean, the biggest thing is, like you said, the M5 is you're finding more consistency. So if they're both equally low spin for you, you'd always go with what's going to offer more consistency. Personally, I like the M5 because I like to tinker, and there's tons of different settings I can have on it. So for me, I'm always an M5 fan over, or M3 or M1. Like, I'm always a fan of those, adjustable models. So I'm good with that. But yeah, I mean, you basically said it right there. M5 is more consistent. So
yeah,
definitely go with that.
Spin, especially low spin with driver, is often discussed but very difficult to achieve. Most players, average players, hit down on it with their driver. And then let's get a club out again. Because we want to explain dynamics as best we can. We have our big rack of like
random
really stuff back here.
Stuff.
So I've still got the rack. Okay, so it's the ladies.
So the ladies
launcher. So when it comes to spin, anything hit above the neutral axis center of gravity is going to spin less. So, but the problem is people hit down on it a lot of times, and that's why you see a lot of sky marks usually up in this direction here, or you'll see a lot of marks down the heel because they're coming across it, and you're going to create a lot of spin anyways, just because the dynamics of a lot of average golfers' golf swings are going to produce more spin. That's why distances hasn't really gone up from the average player, whereas with tour players, because they're absolutely like maximizing dynamics. Actually, TaylorMade just did their like driver video. Speaking of TaylorMade, which is they had Rory and DJ in like their long drive. Ron was there.
Yeah.
Tiger was there just to like contractually, it seemed like he was hanging out because he's not the longest guy anymore. But you have like Rom and Jason Day and Rory, who's like a foot shorter than DJ. It looks like in the commercial, and they are just like getting basically like close to the same ball speed because of the amount of the way their swing dynamics are. Rory creates a ton of speed. DJ looks like he's just kind of like, duh. He doesn't look like he's really swinging at it. But the dynamics of their golf swing are like just absolutely maximize the performance. Now, is Rory going to swing like that all the time? No. He's going to try and work the ball a little bit more. Again, not just generalization, but he's not always going to try and hit up on it 5 degrees, because if you hit a really low spin shot, but you hit it slightly errant, it's going to go a lot more errant because there's less spin on it. That's why when people talk about there's like a sweet spot as far as spin goes. Most average players are less than 3,000 RPMs. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I know I'm usually like 2,700 if I'm on the track. I haven't been on track in a while, but because hockey player, tend to hit down on it. So it's one of those things where I know for me, if I can find a driver that I hit nice and straight and I have some decently low spin, it's not ballooning, or at least I'm getting more consistency, I'll happily give up a few yards for some more consistency.
Yeah. No.
When was the last time you were on track, man?
For the driver, it was early in the year. I was up there and we were just hitting. I wasn't doing any fitting thing. It was just basically hitting different drivers. We were kind of doing a thing for just to get some baseline numbers on some stuff. And it was not a good day, and I was hitting down on the ball a lot. So yeah, I was in the high 2,000s to even low 3,000s. But I'm like that. I mean, I'm kind of neutral to slightly down.
That's not bad though. I mean,
no,
Cameron Champ's down on it.
Yeah.
Speed rules all when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, Cameron Champ and I got a lot in common.
You both play golf right-handed.
We both play golf right-handed, and we both had pink drivers in the
back. There you go, yeah.
Okay. No, so no, I'm tend to be a little more high spin. I'm definitely not a guy who hits up on it really high.
You
So
both eat cereal with a spoon.
yeah, we both put our pants on one leg at a time. But no, I'm typically on the higher spectrum of what they say for my launch conditions I should be. Yeah. But it's just it is what it is. But driver fitting this year, next month, it's gonna happen. Your boy, I'm gonna post it all too. Good, bad, ugly. It's gonna be bad.
It also depends on your playing conditions too. If
True.
you're playing like where I play a lot of times, it's typically wet, so I don't mind, say, getting a little bit of extra carry versus trying to like launch something that doesn't carry quite as far. Now, obviously, that comes down to maximizing numbers. But if it is soft and you try and hit these low spin bullets, that if you miss hit it, especially it starts to fall out of the sky a little faster, then you're not maximizing anywhere close to what you could be. So as far as low spin goes, just find a fitter. We stress it all the time, but it's so important because a lot of people don't get fit and then they wonder why they're not gaining improvements because you're throwing money at a problem that you're not really solving, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Throwing a lot of money at that problem and it's still there.
If my suit doesn't fit anymore, I go out and buy the same size suit and it still doesn't fit. That's my problem, right? Just go find the right size suit. That's all it is.
So here's one of the most loaded questions.
Oh boy.
In golf, fitting, club building, anything. How important is puring the shaft?
Can we just skip this one?
Super loaded. I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on the person, depends on everything. There's camps out there that are going to say both sides. There's going to say it's absolutely needed. There's going to be people who say it's not. It's hard to say. I mean, honestly, like I don't know. I don't know which side of the fence I'm on yet. I really don't.
You can tell by my squirming.
I know what side of the fence you're on. But I mean,
here's my answer, and this is how I answer it every single time.
Okay.
It's up to the player, and there's two schools of thought on this. One is there are club building studios out there that will only pure golf shafts. So you're getting a club built, and it's included in the price. It's included in the cost. There is a price structure built into that. It's not free. They pay to have that machine and all these different things. It's no secret out there. If you can get your clubs pured and it creates a slight improvement based on oscillation and all these things, by all means, do it. Is it going to make a bad or not fitted golf shaft better? No. Is it going to make a great golf shaft that's fitted for you maybe a little better? Potentially. If you think that if you have a set of irons that you're not really sure about, you think, oh, maybe I should get them cured. You're not going to notice a difference in your ball flight. Go get fit again. That's really what it comes down to. Do I think there's potentially some placebo effect in it? The fact that you're getting something that is absolutely maximized? I think so. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. I've played pure golf clubs. Again, I'm a 5 handicap. I'm not a robot. So have I ever noticed a big difference? Zero. I haven't. Just going to put it right out there. I have not noticed a difference between a pure golf shaft and an unpure golf shaft, but I'm also always using premium golf shafts. I'm not buying something that's kind of that really low tier point and then trying to make it work and then going through that process. I'm always using higher end stuff, and the consistency level at that price point or that level of product is so high at this point where I'm not saying there's not outliers or anything like that, but it comes down to what's going to work, and a lot of times it comes down to you making that decision if it's worth it or not. So
yeah,
it's probably the answer you're going to hear a lot, to be honest with you.
And that was just Jason Fiera, and he then said, "My bad, guys."
No, it's okay.
It's
Thanks
right.
for asking. I mean, we're happy to answer. It's just one of those things that gets asked a lot, and it's really difficult to go one way or the other.
All right, Stephen Capper, why do you think the top guys have all gone Tensei Pro Orange and then moved away, like Tiger, Rory? So a lot of them did. Yeah, a lot of them had like Pro White, went Pro Orange, went back to White, or in Tiger's case, went D plus LTD. I think it's all with counterbalancing. They probably went down that road, found something that they really liked about the counterbalancing, and then for whatever reason it wasn't working, so they went back to standard. And it's just, for those guys, a lot of it is, there's a lot of what is he using and having success with. Like, we've talked to Greg, our guy on tour, every week, and he said, like, if there's a guy out there who wins with a shaft all the rest of the guys are going to want to know, what is that shaft? What is it? So there's guys having success. They want to know what it is. They want to try it. They want to see what it's all about. So that's why I think you see, Tensei Orange, Tensei White get really huge, is because guys had success with it. And everybody else wants to try it, see what it's about. And they may find success for a little bit, and then maybe it's not what they thought, and they go back to Old Faithful or something else. But a lot of it, I think, is due to that.
It's hard. Just like we have, or you have, a favorite golf shaft you kind of go to, it's your comfort zone. A lot of players have that. One of the things that, as you mentioned exactly to the point, we were at the PGA show, and on the Monday was they call it Acre Day. So it's the largest collection of custom club builders in the world. We got invited. We were happy to go and kind of see the new product there, as well as True Temper was there. And one of the things that they talked about, and they had their tour up there, there's a pyramid of influence on the PGA Tour, just like at your home club, just like just kind of anything like that. That pyramid of influence is there on tour. So if Tiger comes out and he's ripping drivers and it's going further and his ball speed numbers are up and everyone's like, what the heck is that? Then you're going to see a lot more of those go in. Or DJ, who has that Old Faithful, right, where he goes, that's Fuji 661, and he'll try other stuff because someone else is using it or he's getting good numbers with it. Now he could probably, as the old saying goes, really hit a noodle on a stick really far. But
True.
With that pyramid of influence is really thing. So these guys have access to tons of great golf equipment, some of the best fitters in the world out there. And I know, like, shout out to Ian at TXG. I know last year the Canadian Open, they were on the range, and Gary Woodland, he was working with him. And we were just trying to find something that was going to work. And he was out there just to give like a second opinion and kind of talk guys through some stuff. And got better numbers, changed golf shafts. And then you see guys like Finau into like an Acura, for example. These like long hitters, a lot of those guys use. That's just one example. I'm not cherry picking them or anything, but like it's like, or the Ventus right now, right? Like the Ventus is out there, and just more and more players are using it because someone's using it. They're seeing success. I think Charlie Howell was joking on Johnny's podcast. And he was like, the Epic, the old Graphalloy Epic came out.
Oh yeah,
like the cool graphics that were like worked both ways and like had that nano nickel coating on it. He was like, I don't even care if it fits me. I want to try it because it looks cool. And I think that happens. Like they're just like, a lot of times they're just golfers that want to like be techie and try stuff out. So that's why you'll see guys go to product and shift away, and then maybe they'll try it again and they'll go to something else just because sometimes they're just crazy gearheads like the rest of us.
That Epic was the worst shaft to tip prep ever.
It's really bad.
The walls were like paper thin, and I mean, again, when I talk about mistakes being made, I took one and on a belt sander was like toast. Just threw it away.
I watched a guy
could only hand prep those
with the Epic shaft because the wall, again, you say the wall thickness was super thin. They're really strong from like a bend profile aspect, but they were just from a pressure perspective, they weren't that strong. And I watched a new guy when I worked in like big box retail a long time ago. Someone came in to get one. Oh yeah, I threw it in the grip clamp and didn't adjust the pressure and just
snapped it,
sandwiched it. And I was like, well, it happens, kid. We'll figure that out. We'll explain it. And we'll have to get a new one. So
I did that once. I did a Aldo prototype 60 back when.
Is that the cinnamon one? Was that
no, it was like the off greenish. Yellow one. But I had one of those. I ordered it. I got it. It was in a Callaway Diablo Octane Tour. And I wanted it, so I didn't want to wait for the grip because like the grip was like, I don't know, it was backward. It would have taken longer. So I was like, no, just give me the stock one. Went home, never hit a ball. They had still the plastic on the head. Put it in the thing, tightened the vise. I was talking to somebody on my phone, snapped it, just crack right down the middle.
Yeah.
God.
Expensive mistakes, right? But it's your own gear.
My own gear.
How important is swing weight? And how can you test or fit for swing weight? Never seems to be an option. Swing weight. I just kind of went through this actually on my podcast on Spec. Shout out.
Hey, why not? Why not?
But it is a common question about like club building and fitting, and there are two. I have found over the years, there are two different types of players. There are players who are very sensitive to swing weight, and there are players who are very sensitive to total weight. I'm a total weight guy, where my driver is like, I want to say it's like D3 or D4, somewhere around there. I don't really know. I should know this stuff.
Come on, you don't know your own gear?
But I do know that my fairway wood was like C9 with an 80 grain graphite shaft, weighs at 43 inches, standard size grip, but the head was just a little light, and the shaft has a higher balance point. And I never checked it. I threw it was that SLDR, had it screwed it together, was like, this will be a fun experiment. Went out and was just ripping this thing. And I was like, I should probably check the specs because it works well. I was like, C9? This is insane. And I didn't think about it. I'm like, wait, don't let it get in your head. And I just never thought about it, and I don't worry about it. Yeah. Because I'm more of a total weight guy. So it fits in between my driver and my next club. It fits right in there, so I don't think about it. Some players are you like more of a swing weight guy?
You know, I would like to say, I mean, I've got a pretty wide range. I'm not going to say I'm that guy who, like, everything has to be D2 and the driver has to be, like, I'm not, but I definitely notice that swing weight being off drastically more than I do total weight for me. But I agree 100%. It really depends on the player. Like, I've seen players who walk up and you say, hey, you know, like if I build something for a friend, like, oh, what do you want the swing weight to be on this? And they're like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
And then you measure what they have, and it's either super light or super heavy. And you're like, wow, this is what they were playing. And you're just like, I mean, okay. I mean, we'll put it back together. But yeah, I think it depends on the player.
What was that? GolfWRX Radio on spec.
Yeah.
That's the podcast I do, and I talk about.
Find it on SoundCloud, iTunes, look up GolfWRX Radio.
Yeah, so all of our shows are under one title.
Yep.
And mine are the on spec ones. So I just talk club building, club fitting, and kind of everything in between. Maybe kind of a lot of different topics, but I typically focus on those. So there's always questions coming out. So thanks, Lombo
21.
Right.
Hit refresh.
Yeah, see if we got anything else here.
But yeah, that's swing weight is funny because I didn't really mess with it much until I finally then got a swing weight scale. And now I think mentally knowing all these things, you're kind of like, oh, yeah. The other thing, too, is if you get a swing weight scale and you're really kind of worried about swing weight, make sure you set it up right.
Oh, yeah.
I found that out.
Set it up poorly?
Set it up. Well, so when I moved into my house I'm in now, I have new workbench. Stuff is in the basement. It's just different. And didn't realize that the table I have my swing weight scale on was slightly crooked. So I built a set of irons, and I thought they were all D2. They measured out D2, and I took them in when I got fit for my irons at Club Champion. The guy's like, do you like playing like a really heavy swing weight? And I was like, no, D2 is about right. He's like, just D6. I was like, what?
So your table isn't level. So because it works on a level.
Yeah. So when I went home, I had to adjust it, and so I adjusted it. I put the irons in. I was like, yep, D6. Like, there you go.
I have like one test club. It's kind of like, call it like my go-to as like my standard. So I built a club, got it to like rate to D2 with lead tape, and I put it on a digital swing weight scale that a shop had that's really nice, a lot nicer and more expensive than mine. Got it rate to D2, checked the lie loft on the digital lie loft machine after it was calibrated. So I know the lie loft and swing weight of this one golf club. And then when I go home, if I ever think that something's off, I can throw it on my scale. I have two scales because one was generously given to me because the guy was getting out of club building. Nice. It was off. It was actually off just a tiny bit compared to mine, which was I adjusted it as well. So I took a tiny little square of like lead tape. We're talking like less than like half inch by half inch, and just found the place on the scale that got it out, stuck it there, and didn't think about it again. So
nice.
As far as swing weight goes versus total weight, if you want to get fit for swing weight, there is a bit of a trick. It's not the easiest thing to do, and the reason for that is swing weight is a relation between all combined parts. So head weight, shaft weight, and grip. What I do for my own personal builds is I know that my 7-iron in my set is going to be 271 grams, 272, depending on the club. But if it's already heavier, I'm not going to try and ream out and take off a gram anyways. But that's kind of one of those things where, like, I just build from that, get my head weights correct, and then I just build. I don't worry about any of that stuff because one of the things that I always found difficult was with combo sets. The center of gravity in irons actually changes. So if you're going from a blade to a cavity back, the cavity back center of gravity is lower. So the blades actually have to go up and jump. So if, let's say, you're building a 4 and 5 iron and a 6 iron, and there's 7 grams in between, and then you go to the 8 iron, and it's got a higher center of gravity, so it's closer to the fulcrum of the swing weight scale. Going deep here, you might have to go to 9 grams. So you're actually progressing in like from a 9 gram, and then from there you go 777 again down to your wedges, and then whatever figured out, because that transition in the center of gravity of the golf club, because of its relativeness to the fulcrum of the swing weight scale, can cause your swing weights to be off. So if you just did 7 grams, you're like, why are my short irons now lighter? That's why. But the head weights are actually progressively exactly the same between each club, but because of that, the swing weight's going to be off, and some players will notice it, some players won't. But to actually get fit, just take one of your clubs you like, maybe some lead tape, and then just go out and see what kind of offers some more consistency. It's a long process, but that's kind of the one way you can do it.
Thanks, Bryson.
Yeah.
The other thing, like you mentioned, how that center of gravity, like if you really drastically bend your irons upright or flat, you'll change the swing weight as well.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, does that really change in your hand? I mean, some people notice it, some people won't. But yeah, I mean, just bending either, what is it, like 3 degrees or something like that, or somewhere like it's like 3 or 4 degrees, and it will change the swing weight by like half a point or a point. Yeah. So all that stuff plays into effect.
Let's see what we got here. Importance.
It's all there.
We're getting near the end of the questions here. Okay, here's a good one. Back to Get Air 23 on our forum post. What do you find the most exciting time of year for new golf equipment? Do you find it more exciting when there's rumors or when picks start to come out and you get to test? Speculation's always a lot of fun.
It really is. I mean, just seeing. I mean, you always hear people talk about it. The problem is that everybody talks about stuff, and 50% of it's right and 50% of it's wrong. So, I mean, we've seen it every year where somebody comes out and says, "Oh, this OEM's doing this. Just wait, it's going to be this."
My friend told me.
Yeah, I know a guy
through his friend's brother's cousin's nephew's sister that.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that part, I mean, it gets me going, because I'm like, all right, the new stuff is starting to be talked about. But until we actually see photos, and then I can really speculate of like, oh, there's movable weights here, oh, there's carbon here, whatever. Then you can start to make your assumptions of like, wow, what is this really going to do? So for me, once I see photos, that starts getting me going, because then it's like, all right, I can't wait to really get it in my hands. I can't wait to hit it. But I like that speculation after seeing the physical, like see at least a photo of the actual product.
I think what happens sometimes is, depending on like what's released, there can be like great press off the bat, because there is still speculation if they've like leaked a little nugget, or you can get really cool reviews. So like, I know the big rumor was Ping is going to offer an adjustable weight driver, movable weight driver. Yeah. So everyone was really excited for that. And I remember when the TaylorMade driver came, like with the screw face, people were calling it, right? And we were like, what the heck is that? And so there was a lot of speculation on like, what does it do? How does it perform? How is it going to do something like that? And you saw, because it is TaylorMade, there was a lot of positive and negative questions about it. Even when like every Flash came out, people talked about, oh, I hate the color. Who cares what color it is? For me, you could paint a golf club any color you want. I will never care. Don't care. If it goes on the golf course, you can put unicorns and all kinds of stuff on. I don't care. Doesn't matter.
That's what I'm going to do. Next time you're going to drive, I'm going to put a big unicorn sticker
on the ground. Okay.
But no, I mean, like, I know what you're saying, because like end of the year, especially, it was exciting back when 2016, or no, was it 2016 M1, M2. And beginning of the year, everybody was like, M1, this is the way to go, whatever. It was like, the one. And by the end of the year, everybody had, all those guys who were in M1s had typically switched out to M2s. And it was kind of interesting to see at the end of the year what really did work for people. And M2 came out ahead. And that was a kind of a cool thing. And we didn't see it, I don't think, as much last year.
I think the G400 Max was a huge surprise for a lot of people, because you have their game improvement driver with Finau using it.
Playing it.
And I think Bubba.
Matt played it.
There you go. See? Bubba using it. So, like, you have these guys that you'd be like, why wouldn't you play the smaller version, the lower spinning version? But, again, because they maximize their dynamics at impact because of their golf swings, they don't need the lower spin, whereas some players who need that are going to benefit more from something that is going to give them that technological advantage, whereas they can't maximize, or they just don't, they're not able to, versus a player that can. And you can use a game improvement driver that offers higher MOI, more forgiveness, and if you hit it with the right dynamics, it's going to go a hell of a long way.
Yeah, no, definitely. So,
anything else here?
How much lead tape on a head would it take to feel a change of swing weight? Well,
It's all about grams.
It's all arguably going to be 2 grams. Will change one swing weight point in the head.
A point, yeah.
Depending on where you put it. I mean, you put it closer to the heel, it's going to be slightly less. Out of the toe, it might be slightly more.
And club length factors in. So 2 grams on a longer golf club is going to factor in more than 2 grams on a shorter golf club.
So on average, 2 grams. And if you're asking how much lead tape, every lead tape manufacturer is different, so it's hard to say. I mean, they make high density, they make stuff that's thicker, thinner, whatever. So it's one of those, if you don't know, start off with very little pieces and build your way up, and you'll get there. But to say 1 inch equals whatever, it all depends.
Yeah.
I mean, every time you buy lead tape, it's slightly different. So I don't even worry about it. I put a piece on at a time and measure it, and I'll get to where I need to be.
Yeah. Good question, though.
Yeah. I think that's.
I think we're getting near the end of the questions, so that was
that's all we got there.
Yeah.
All right.
That was our first live
Q&A,
talking golf and clubs and tech and kind of everything in between. So
apologize we were late.
Yeah, technical lighting issues that you solved.
Yep, exactly. So we'll definitely do this again. It's super fun. And yeah, I guess that's
all right
it for episode 1 of this.
Appreciate all the questions. Thanks so much.
See you guys.
Thanks. Keep it going.